The chamber hummed with the low thrum of ancient energy conduits, their glow casting an eerie light over the polished obsidian floors. Leah Sivas stood at the center of the Galactic Council Hall, her violet eyes scanning the faces of the gathered delegates. The weight of their collective authority pressed down on her shoulders like a star's gravity well, but she held her posture firm, her voice unwavering. "Esteemed council members, I implore you to reconsider." Leah's words carried a controlled urgency, calculated but sincere. The Drekan Empire's actions in the Orleans cluster are not mere territorial aggression. Their supply lines are far too advanced for their known technological capabilities. Someone is helping them. An elder delegate, Porhaz of the Metherin, leaned forward, his voice laced with skepticism. "Your claims are speculative at best, Ambassador Sivas. The Council has reviewed your preliminary report. Circumstantial evidence does not justify action. You ask us to risk destabilizing the entire galaxy over what might be paranoia." A ripple of agreement murmured through the hall. Leah clenched her fists at her sides, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. She had anticipated resistance, but the stakes demanded persistence. She took a step forward. "The Drekan have never waged war with this level of coordination before," Leah countered, her voice growing sharper. "And what of the intercepted transmissions? The encryption patterns do not match Drekan coding. They're coming from an unknown source." Porhaz waved a dismissive hand. "Unknown sources abound in the galaxy. Pirates, rogue AI fragments, some long-forgotten species stirring in the void. This is not unprecedented. It's not just encryption patterns." Leah snapped, uncharacteristically losing her composure for a moment. The hall fell silent. She inhaled deeply, regaining her equilibrium. "There's intent here. A pattern. Someone is orchestrating this, and their goal is to destabilize the Council itself. If we don't act now, the consequences will be irreversible." A sharp, chiming tone broke the silence as Delegate Ray of the Telari spoke up. Her crystalline features refracted the chamber's light like shards of glass. "Suppose, for a moment, that you are correct, Ambassador Sivas. What would you have us do? Commit fleets to an unprovoked intervention? Our treaties are delicate threads holding the galaxy together. One wrong move could unravel them entirely." Leah hesitated, weighing her next words. "Then send me. I'll go to the Drekan front lines myself. If I can uncover definitive proof, the Council can act without jeopardizing its neutrality." Porhaz snorted. "A suicide mission. The Drekan do not negotiate, especially with outsiders." "I'm not asking for their permission," Leah said coldly. "I'm asking for a chance to stop this war before it begins." The chamber fell into heavy silence. Finally, the council chair, a towering figure cloaked in robes of shifting starlight, spoke in measured tones. "Ambassador Sivas, your commitment is admirable. The council grants your request. But know this, if you fail, the responsibility for the fallout will rest squarely on your shoulders." Leah inclined her head. "Understood." As the meeting adjourned, Porhaz caught up with her in the corridors, his tone low and conspiratorial. "You're overreaching, Sivas. Your instincts have served you well in the past, but this time, you've let your emotions cloud your judgment." Leah stopped, fixing him with a steely gaze. "You think this is about emotion? This is about survival. If I'm wrong, the worst we lose is time. But if I'm right, and we do nothing, it will cost us the galaxy." Porhaz opened his mouth to retort, but Leah turned sharply on her heel and strode away, her steps echoing in the hollow expanse. The Drekan border was chaos incarnate. Leah's shuttle descended into a war zone, the air thick with plasma trails and the distant explosions of orbital bombardments. She navigated the battlefield with precision, her ship's stealth systems barely keeping her cloaked from detection. Her destination was a Drekan forward base, a hive of activity crawling with soldiers and war machines. Once inside, Leah's diplomatic credentials allowed her a sliver of access, but she knew her time was limited. The Drekan were suspicious by nature, and her presence here was an anomaly they wouldn't tolerate for long. She slipped into the shadows of a maintenance corridor, her portable scanner pinging faint traces of anomalous energy signatures. "Come on," she whispered, following the trail deeper into the base. Her path led to a locked chamber, guarded by two hulking Drekken warriors. Their reptilian scales gleamed under the harsh lights, and their claws flexed idly, itching for violence. Lia considered her options. Diplomacy wasn't going to cut it here. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a small hollow emitter, projecting a false override code onto the chamber's access panel. The guards hesitated as the door hissed open, distracted just long enough for Lia to slip past them. Inside, the air was colder, and the hum of alien machinery filled the space. A massive console dominated the room, its surface etched with unfamiliar glyphs. Lia's heart raced as her scanner lit up. This was it. The energy signature matched nothing in the Council's database. This wasn't Drekken tech. She began downloading the console's data, her eyes darting to the doorway every few seconds. The file transfer was agonizingly slow. Come on, come on. Suddenly, a shadow loomed behind her. Lia spun, her hand instinctively reaching for the concealed blade at her side, but the figure raised its hands in a gesture of peace. It was a Drekken officer, his golden eyes narrowing as he studied her. "You should not be here, outsider," he growled in a guttural tone. Lia straightened, trying to appear unfazed. "And yet here I am. What does that tell you?" The officer's lip curled, revealing sharp teeth. "It tells me you are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both. Perhaps." Lia gestured to the console. "But if I'm right, your war is being manipulated by forces far beyond your empire's control. Don't you want to know the truth?" The officer's gaze flicked to the console, then back to her. For a moment, there was silence. Then, he stepped aside. "You have 10 minutes. Lia didn't waste time questioning his motives. The file transfer completed, and she stowed the data drive just as alarms blared through the base. The officer snarled, his claws flexing. "Go now." She nodded, slipping back into the corridor. The base was in chaos, Drekken soldiers scrambling to respond to the breach. Lia's stealth systems barely held as she navigated the labyrinthine halls, her heart pounding. She made it to her shuttle just as the first shots were fired in her direction, the hull shuddering as she lifted off. As her ship breached the atmosphere, Lia allowed herself a brief moment of relief. But the weight of the data drive in her hand reminded her that this was only the beginning. Whatever she had uncovered would shake the galaxy to its core, and she could only hope the Council was ready to listen. Lia Sivas adjusted her coat against the biting wind as she stepped onto Earth's soil for the first time. The air felt dense compared to the thin atmosphere of Erixus Prime, and the constant hum of human activity was overwhelming. She moved quickly through the bustling streets of the sprawling megacity, her eyes scanning for the location listed on the dossier in her hand. The humans were a peculiar species, chaotic in their movements, unpredictable in their interactions, yet strangely magnetic in their unrelenting energy. Lia couldn't help but feel like an interloper in a world that thrived on disorder. The door to the rundown lab opened with a reluctant creak. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, ozone, and faint traces of burnt circuitry. A disheveled man sat hunched over a cluttered desk, his fingers dancing over a holographic interface. He didn't look up when she entered. "Jonah Cass?" Lia asked, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "Depends who's asking," he replied, not breaking his focus. His voice was dry, tired, but sharp, like someone used to warding off interruptions. "Lia Sivas. Galactic Council." She stepped closer, placing a data pad on the edge of his desk. "I need your help," he snorted, finally glancing up. His eyes, bloodshot but piercing, flicked from her face to the insignia on her uniform. "The Council, huh? Didn't know you guys even remembered Earth existed. What is it? Another study to prove how primitive we are?" "This isn't a study," Lia said, matching his sardonic tone with calm precision. "It's a matter of survival, for all of us." Jonah leaned back, crossing his arms. "Go on. You've got 30 seconds to convince me I shouldn't kick you out. The Drekken Empire has launched an invasion of the Oralise cluster. They've been equipped with technology far beyond their capabilities, and the Council is paralyzed. I've traced the interference to a rogue faction known as the Voren. They're destabilizing the galaxy from the shadows, and I need someone who understands chaos to counter them. Someone who doesn't think like the rest of us. Jonah let out a short laugh, rubbing his temples. You're kidding, right? You want me, a disgraced theorist from a backwater planet, to save your galaxy? I can barely keep my lab running. You're more than a theorist, Liao pressed. Your work on chaos systems is groundbreaking. You see patterns where others see randomness. And right now, that's exactly what we need. The Voren strategies are too rigid to adapt to the unexpected. With your help, we can exploit that. He studied her, skepticism etched into his features. If you're so desperate, why hasn't the Council approved this? Why aren't they backing you? Because they don't believe in humans, Liao admitted. They see you as unpredictable and dangerous. I disagree. I think your unpredictability is your greatest strength. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Flattery won't get you anywhere. What's in it for me? Liao hesitated for only a moment. If we fail, the galaxy descends into war. Earth won't escape the fallout. You'll be fighting for your survival whether you like it or not. I'm offering you the chance to be proactive. Jonah sighed, leaning forward and tapping the data pad she'd brought. He skimmed through the files, his expression darkening as he absorbed the information. Finally, he muttered, "This is insane." "Is that a yes?" Liao asked, her tone softening just enough to reveal a sliver of hope. "It's a you owe me an explanation when this all goes sideways," Jonah replied. He stood, stretching. "Let me call a few people. If I'm doing this, I'm not doing it alone." Hours later, Liao found herself in a dimly lit room surrounded by 3 more humans, each as unconventional as Jonah. At the far end of the table sat Maeve, a wiry woman with an angular face and eyes that seemed to analyze everything. She was introduced as a master hacker who had once dismantled an intercontinental power grid as a protest against government surveillance. Beside her sat Tom, a broad-shouldered logistics expert who'd spent years running black market supply chains. Finally, there was Quinn, a former military strategist whose unorthodox tactics had earned both victories and court-martials in equal measure. "So, this is the dream team," Maeve said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Saving the galaxy with 4 humans and an alien diplomat. Sounds like a joke." "It's not a joke," Liao said firmly. "It's reality. And the stakes couldn't be higher." Tom leaned forward, his deep voice rumbling. "What exactly are we up against?" Liao projected a hologram from her wrist, displaying the Drekken fleets and the Voren supply chains she'd uncovered. The Drekken are being manipulated by the Voren, an advanced species operating outside Council jurisdiction. They're using the Drekken to destabilize the galaxy, but their rigidity makes them vulnerable. If we disrupt their operations and expose their interference, we can force them to retreat. "And you think we're the right people for that job?" Quinn asked, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. "Yes," Liao said simply. "Because the Council and every species under its banner are trapped in their own paradigms. They can't think beyond their rules and hierarchies. But you, humans, you thrive in chaos. You innovate under pressure. That's what we need." Maeve smirked. "Flattering us won't help either. What's the actual plan?" Jonah stood, taking over. "The Voren rely on precision. They don't adapt well to surprises. We're going to use that against them. Maeve, you'll hack their communication networks and flood them with false data. Make them doubt their own intel. Tom, you'll coordinate supply chain sabotage, targeting their weakest points. Quinn, you'll draw up strategies to exploit the Drekken's battlefield rigidity. And me?" He glanced at Liao. "I'll make sure it all ties together." "And me?" Liao asked, folding her arms. "You'll keep the Council off our backs while we do what needs to be done," Jonah said bluntly. The room fell silent for a moment, tension crackling like static. Then Quinn chuckled, shaking his head. "This is the craziest thing I've ever been a part of. And the most important," Liao said, her voice steady. "The galaxy is counting on us." May shrugged, a wry grin tugging at her lips. Well, if we're going to cause interstellar mayhem, might as well do it right. Let's get to work. As the team dispersed to begin preparations, Leah felt a flicker of hope amid the uncertainty. These humans were unlike anyone she'd ever worked with, brash, unpredictable, and fiercely independent. But they were exactly what the galaxy needed. The Voren flagship hung in the void like a dagger poised to strike, its sleek edges shimmering with an otherworldly hue. Inside, the air was sterile, the lighting harsh and clinical. Sci-Fi stood in the shadows of an auxiliary control room, her breath shallow as the distant hum of alien machinery pulsed around her. Jonah's voice crackled in her earpiece, sharp and precise despite the static interference. Maeve's breach is holding for now, but we've got a 3-minute window before they reroute the network. Are you in position? Leah whispered back, her fingers dancing over the holographic console. Almost. Their encryption layers are dense. I need another 60 seconds. You've got 30. Jonah snapped. Quinn's decoy fleet isn't going to last long, and Tom's running out of tricks. If we lose timing, we're toast. Leah exhaled through clenched teeth, focusing on the console. The Voren system architecture was maddeningly efficient, a web of interlocked redundancies that punished even the smallest deviation. Her training as a diplomat hadn't prepared her for this, but failure wasn't an option. On the surface of a nearby planet, Quinn was barking orders over a secure line to a cluster of salvage drones, the battered remnants of Drekken hardware they had managed to hack into compliance. The machines swarmed like angry insects, their movements erratic enough to confuse the Voren's precision targeting systems. Keep them moving! Quinn shouted. They're recalibrating. If they pin us down, we're done. One of his lieutenants chimed in, her voice tight with stress. We've already lost 3 drones. They're adapting faster than expected. Buy us more time, Quinn said, his tone brooking no argument. Meanwhile, aboard a stolen freighter in low orbit, Tom gripped the controls, his knuckles white. He was threading the needle between automated Voren defenses, a labyrinth of mines and sentry drones designed to obliterate anything that didn't transmit the right clearance codes. Any chance those fake signals are still holding? He asked, his voice strained. Maeve's response came with an edge of irritation. If you stop asking, I can focus on making sure they do. Keep flying. The freighter shuddered as a sentry drone scanned it, hesitating just long enough for Tom to pass into the next sector. He didn't allow himself to breathe until the drone disappeared from the radar. Back on the flagship, Leah's console finally chirped in triumph. I'm in, she whispered. Jonah's reply was immediate. Good. Upload the payload and get out of there. I've got a nice little chaos package waiting to blow their tactical AI to bits. Leah slid the data drive into the console, her heart pounding. The holographic interface shifted, displaying an intricate array of command prompts. She input the sequence Jonah had drilled into her, her hands steady despite the urgency. Suddenly, the door behind her hissed open. Leah froze, her mind racing. A Voren officer stepped into the room, its elongated form almost ghost-like under the harsh lights. Its voice was a cold, mechanical hiss. Intruder detected. Identify yourself. Leah turned slowly, her face calm despite the spike of fear in her chest. Diplomatic envoy, she said smoothly, her universal translator converting her words into the Voren's synthetic tongue. Here on behalf of the Galactic Council. The officer tilted its head, studying her with an unsettling intensity. This sector is restricted. Explain your presence. I'm here to negotiate, Leah said, buying time. Her fingers hovered near her concealed comm device. The Council is aware of your operations and wishes to avoid unnecessary escalation. The Voren officer's gaze flicked to the active console behind her. Negotiate? While tampering with our systems? Deception is an inefficient strategy. Before Leah could respond, Jonah's voice cut into her earpiece. Stall for 10 more seconds. I'm priming the detonation. Leah squared her shoulders, keeping her tone even. I acted out of necessity. Your interference in the Oralise cluster threatens galactic stability. If we don't act now, countless lives will be lost. The Voren officer stepped closer, its towering form casting a shadow over her. Stability is irrelevant. Order is the only goal. Your species has proven incapable of maintaining it. Then maybe you don't understand us as well as you think, Liao replied, a steel edge to her voice. Jonah's voice came through again, triumphant. Done. Get out of there, Liao. Without hesitation, Liao activated her comm device, releasing a burst of electromagnetic interference that momentarily disoriented the officer. She bolted from the room, her heart pounding as alarms blared throughout the ship. Extraction points compromised. Maeve's voice crackled. You're going to have to improvise. Of course I do, Liao muttered under her breath, sprinting down a corridor. The ship shuddered as Jonah's payload began its work, targeting the Voren's central AI core. Lights flickered, and the hum of machinery turned into an erratic cacophony. In the chaos, Liao found herself in a docking bay. A small, sleek shuttle sat unattended, likely a Voren vessel designed for short-range reconnaissance. She didn't hesitate, overriding its access panel with the last of Maeve's preloaded codes. The shuttle roared to life as she launched it into the void. Liao, you clear? Jonah's voice came through, sharp with concern. Barely, she replied, the shuttle's controls unfamiliar but intuitive enough to navigate. Status? The payload's doing its job, Jonah said. Their tactical systems are in freefall. Quinn's decoy fleet is pulling out now, and Tom's running evac for the ground teams. We've got maybe a 10-minute window before they start piecing things back together. Liao adjusted the shuttle's trajectory, heading toward their rendezvous point. Then let's make it count. The Council needs to see this for themselves. The team regrouped aboard their main ship, a battered but resilient cruiser hidden in the shadow of a nearby moon. The atmosphere in the war room was tense but electric. We did it, Quinn said, his voice rough but satisfied. For now, at least. They'll retaliate, Maeve warned, her eyes glued to a monitor displaying the Voren's disrupted fleet movements. We poked the hornet's nest. Good, Jonah said, leaning back in his chair. Let them flail. We've shown they're not invincible. That's the first step. Liao stood at the center of the room, the weight of the galaxy's precarious balance pressing heavily on her. This is only the beginning. We've exposed them, but the real battle lies ahead. If the Council doesn't act, all of this will have been for nothing. Tom crossed his arms, his expression grim. You think they'll listen? They have to, Liao said firmly. Because now, they have no choice. The ship's engines roared to life as they left the moon's shadow, heading for the heart of the Galactic Council's territory. The team's work was far from over, but for the first time, Liao felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Chaos had tipped the scales, and humanity had proven its worth. The council chamber hummed with quiet tension as the delegates gathered, their voices low and uncertain. Representatives from dozens of species filled the semicircular seats, their expressions ranging from skepticism to outright disdain. At the center of the room, Liao Sci-Fi stood before the dais, her posture calm but resolute. To her left, Jonah's chair was conspicuously empty, a silent reminder of the cost of their mission. Leah's voice cut through the murmurs, clear and commanding. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you not as a diplomat today, but as a witness. What I bring to you is not conjecture but proof. The Voren are no longer content to operate in the shadows. They have moved to destabilize the galaxy, and they will not stop until they've consumed everything we stand for. The Vaith delegate, a tall, serpentine figure with glistening scales, leaned forward, his tone dripping with skepticism. You claim much, Liao Sci-Fi, yet you bring no tangible evidence. The Council has heard similar warnings before, all unsubstantiated. Why should we believe you now? Liao met his gaze evenly. Because this time, I have more than words. I have data pulled directly from the Voren flagship. Their tactical AI, their invasion plans, their manipulation of the Drekken, everything. It's undeniable. She gestured to Maeve, who stood at the edge of the room. With a flick of her wrist, Maeve activated a projection in the center of the chamber. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared, glowing faintly. Red markers spread across the display, each representing a system destabilized or infiltrated by the Voren. Gasps rippled through the chamber as the scope of the threat became clear. The Shalan delegate, a diminutive but fierce creature with bright plumage, clicked her beak in alarm. This cannot be ignored. If these claims are true, the Voren are far more dangerous than we imagined. The Drekken representative, a hulking figure encased in biomechanical armor, rumbled in anger. And yet you accuse my people of collusion? The Drekken Empire does not bow to outside manipulation. Leah's voice sharpened. Perhaps not willingly, but the Voren played you. They supplied your rogue factions with weapons and resources, ensuring the conflict in the Oralise cluster would spiral out of control. Their aim was to spread chaos, not to aid you. The Drekken representative's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence an unspoken acknowledgement of the possibility. Jonah's voice echoed in Leah's mind as she pressed forward. His words had often been a mix of confidence and cynicism, but they were always grounded in truth. They're scared of what they don't understand. You've got to make them see why that fear is justified, and why it's also their greatest weapon. Taking a steadying breath, Leah addressed the chamber again. The Voren's strength lies in their ability to exploit our divisions. They thrive on the rigidity of our systems, the predictability of our protocols. But humanity... She hesitated, feeling the weight of Jonah's absence. We are different. Unorthodox, chaotic, and adaptable. It's why the Voren fear us. It's why they've avoided Earth for so long. A ripple of murmurs spread through the delegates. The representative of the Zentari, a crystalline being who shimmered with refracted light, spoke cautiously. You suggest that humanity, a species so often dismissed as primitive and volatile, is the key to countering the Voren? Leah's lips curled into a faint, determined smile. Not the key, representative, but a necessary catalyst. The mission we undertook, a group of humans and a few brave allies, crippled the Voren's tactical network. We didn't do it with overwhelming firepower or superior technology. We did it by thinking the way they couldn't predict. Maeve stepped forward, her tone sharp and deliberate. Jonah Cass, a human who gave his life to ensure our success, once said, "Order only works until chaos gets a foothold." He believed in using unpredictability as a tool, a weapon even. That's what we brought to the table. And it's what the Council must embrace if we're going to stand a chance. The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over the delegates. The Vaith delegate was the first to break the quiet. You ask us to gamble our futures on chaos? On the unpredictable nature of humanity? This is a risk the Council cannot afford. Leah stepped closer to the dais, her voice steady and unwavering. What you cannot afford is inaction. The Voren are already moving. Every moment we delay, they gain ground. Humanity isn't a gamble, it's the unexpected edge that could turn the tide. Work with us, or face the Voren alone. The choice is yours. The chamber erupted in debate, voices clashing as alliances and opinions shifted. Leah stood in the center, her gaze fixed and unwavering, even as uncertainty swirled around her. Quinn leaned over, whispering in her ear. They're not going to go for it. Too much fear, too much pride. They will, Leah said, her voice low but firm. Because deep down, they know the truth. They just don't want to admit it yet. Hours passed as the Council deliberated. Finally, the Arbiter, an ancient being whose species served as impartial overseers of galactic governance, rose from his seat. His voice was a resonant blend of tones, commanding the attention of all present. The Council recognizes the gravity of the evidence presented, the Arbiter declared. And while the proposal carries great risk, the threat posed by the Voren leaves us no alternative. Earth will be granted provisional status within the Council, and a joint task force will be established to counter the Voren threat. Humanity's unique perspective will be valued. A mixture of relief and apprehension spread across the room. Leah allowed herself a small sigh of relief, though the weight of the coming battle still loomed large. As the delegates filed out, Maeve clapped Leah on the shoulder. You did it. Well, we did it. But you pulled them over the line. Leah shook her head. This isn't a victory, Maeve. It's a beginning. The Voren will retaliate, and the Council's unity is fragile at best. We've bought ourselves a chance, but the fight is far from over. Quinn joined them, his usual cocky grin tempered by exhaustion. Then let's make it count. Jonah wouldn't have wanted us to back down now. Leah nodded, her gaze drifting to the projection of the galaxy, still illuminated with the Voren's expanding influence. He wouldn't. And neither will we. The team left the chamber together, their steps heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead. Chaos had given them an edge, but the true battle for the galaxy's survival was only beginning.